So in chapter 1045, we get a pretty good explanation as to what's going on with Luffy's new Gear 5 / Devil Fruit Awakening. And we also got to see some amazing feats of him embarrassing Kaido in literally comical fashion. So I want to talk about all of that in this video, but let me start from the beginning of how Luffy got to this point. So while Luffy was fighting Kaido, he was kind of coming to his exhaustion point. He was using his last resort in Gear 4 Snake Man, and when he was going for his final blow against Kaido, one of the CP0 agents came out on orders of the Gorosei to take down Luffy and distracted him, allowing Kaido to get one final bonk on the back of his head, which at that point seemed like he had defeated him. But Kaido made the mistake that a lot of shonen battle manga villains make, and that was defeating the MC at the end of a crucial arc, because it was this defeat that led Luffy to awakening his fruit and becoming the new sun god Nika. Now, other than the plot requiring this, of course, this could possibly also be explained by Crocodile's dialogue back in chapter 544. When we see the jailer Zoan and Impel Down come back after being defeated, Crocodile says he was revived, of course. That's an awakened Zoan type ability user. Their abnormal resilience is their strong point. If we keep wasting time, the 3 from before will be up too. So that might be a little confusing for a few reasons, because if you're not up to date with this story, because you might be thinking, wait, Luffy doesn't have a Zoan fruit. He has a Paramecia Gumu Gumu rubber fruit. Well, yeah, that's what we were led to believe for over 20 years at this point, but it turns out this whole time that was just disinformation spread by the Gorosei, because it's heavily implied that this fruit originally belonged to Joy Boy. But also, aside from that, it's apparently the most ridiculous power in the world, so they decided to rename the fruit to the Gumu Gumu, rubber fruit, in hopes of, I guess, having people disinterested in it. But it turns out that this fruit is truly a mythical Zoan type, the human fruit model Nika. And they further go on to say that the user of this fruit possesses a body with the properties of rubber and fighting in whatever way they fancy, bringing smiles to the faces of people. Awakening brings his rubbery body greater physical strength and freedom. It is said that in all of the world, there is no power more ridiculous. And that's not hyperbole, because in chapter 1044 and more so 1045, we see that that's a pretty accurate statement. So once Luffy has awakened, he looks like this. And according to Yamato and Momonosuke in chapter 1045, they say that his hair and clothes are all white. Now, other than this being a pretty cool aesthetic, the explanation for this could be because of the natural properties of rubber. Because rubber comes from latex that comes from rubber trees. And the natural latex is like a white liquidy substance. Now, as for the rubber coming from trees, and just trees in general go much deeper than just that. A lot of you know by now that Oda has built One Piece by combining multiple lores and mythologies. I mean, so many. This Nika individual that this fruit is based off of, while we don't know their exact origin and myth in the One Piece world, Oda himself built it off of many lores and mythologies, because it also goes back to what the Gorosei was saying when they were explaining this fruit. This particular fruit has the name of a god. Part of it could come from Maldives mythology about the wish tree Nika. Part of it could also come from Indian mythology about a god who lives in a tree and can grant wishes and is kind of like a genie type individual, which we see Luffy kind of exhibiting genie type qualities, I suppose. If you would like a super deep dive into all of this stuff, check out the video link in the description. It'll take you to Uteron's channel, the guy who discovered all this stuff. But anyway, let's go into what Luffy can do once he is in this form. So as the Gorosei said, he can fight any way he fancies and has freedom. And that's very much true, because Kaido says in chapter 1045 that he can make his surroundings rubbery like a Paramecia awakening, but his transformation is more like that of a typical Zoan fruit. So Luffy is getting the best of both worlds here, because he can alter his surroundings like what we've seen of awakened Paramecias, such as Doflamingo and Katakuri. We saw Luffy grip up the ground, turn it to rubber to block one of Kaido's bolo breaths, but not only that, but he can also make other people become rubber, such as what we saw with Kid's awakening when he made Big Mom a magnet. Because in chapter 1045, Luffy makes Kaido become rubber on multiple occasions. But the most significant comes at the end of the chapter when he literally punches through Kaido's head. But not to the point of where, you know, he's like puncturing his skull and killing him. You know, since he's just making him rubber, he's kind of just giving him a super deep punch through the head. Also, what Luffy does to lead up to this one big attack where he's like punching in Kaido's head, we see him become like this tornado of fists in this awesome sequence. And I think this might be a callback to chapter 589 when we see the flashback of Luffy initially doing his training after receiving the rubber fruit, or in this case, the mythical Nika fruit. He's performing a similar move here, and of course being laughed at by Ace, which I'm sure goes back to what the Gorosei initially planned with their, you know, disinformation campaign. But if that wasn't enough, there are more elements to it, because Kaido further says, describing Luffy's power here, that he's coated with armament and Conqueror's Haki, and he can influence anything around him with his ability. So we saw previously in this arc with Luffy's very long fight against Kaido that Luffy could use Conqueror's Haki as a method of attack, similar to how we've seen previously with armament Haki. But now in Gear 5 / this awakening, Luffy's just taking it to the next level. And aside from, you know, manipulating others, Luffy of course has complete freedom and manipulation of himself, even more so than what we've seen before, of course, because Luffy can just take hits from Kaido unlike he had before, but also he can like make himself a literal giant at this point. This could be a parallel to the original Joy Boy, who at this point is heavily implied to have been a giant, at least going off of the big straw hat that we see Imu observing in Mary Joie. Also all of the secrecy and ties to Elbaf, as well as them having the Atom Tree. That could be a parallel to the whole Nika tree as well, maybe. But if the original Joy Boy wasn't a giant, his giant straw hat could just be because he may have always perpetually been in this huge manipulated Nika rubber form. Not really sure yet, but you know, we'll find out in a few years, I'm sure. And aside from all of the other fantastical abilities and whatnot that we just went over, I can't forget to mention that he's just absolutely bustedly strong as well. I mean, not just like on the power scale, I mean like quite literally physically super strong. I mean, he manhandles Kaido multiple times throughout, and also at a point he just slams him on the ground, just like how Nightmare Luffy did to Oars. And I'm pretty sure that is a direct parallel from Oda there, because there are similarities between Luffy inheriting that new personality from Nightmare Luffy, as well as him inheriting this new personality from the Fruit Awakening with the whole Joy Boy thing. So yeah, that is Luffy's Gear 5. Pretty ridiculous, but I think in the best possible way, right? Let me know what you think about this in the comments, and if you liked the video, guys, please give it a like, and please subscribe if you haven't already. Have a great day. I'll see you in the next one.